Here we are starting off on the float of the Big Hole River. We're starting off at the Maiden Rock area, although everything around here is called Maiden Rock. Flow today is about 1,000 cubic feet per second, coming down off the spring freshet. Coming down out of the upper section of the Big Hole River, and we're coming through where the river is incised through what looks like limestone. So these cliffs on the left bank of the river as we go down look like limestone. They have probably some iron in them to give it that orangish brown color, but you can also see the characteristic caves of limestone cliffs. That's of course the mildly acidic meteoric water, rain and snowmelt that is on the surface will slowly dissolve the calcium carbonate of the limestone, giving off CO2. And so you can see these beautiful caves forming in here. If you look closely, lots of birds coming in and out of them here on this beautiful late June morning. So you can see here we're passing some people that are fishing, and the Big Hole is a blue ribbon trout stream, one of a few in this area of Montana, and it's very popular with anglers, not only for its trout but for its accessibility and its beauty, running through the mountains here, and then we'll eventually come out into the more open Big Sky country. The Big Hole is a very popular fishing spot. One, because it's a blue ribbon trout fishery. Just amazing fishing for these trout here in Montana. But also because of the Arctic grayling. This is actually the only place where it's a native species in the lower 48 states. And so the grayling's health is an issue of concern. And things like increasing water temperatures and lowering flow rates are things that are being monitored as people are trying to conserve the habitat for the Arctic grayling. They're a beautiful fish and very popular in this part of the world. So floating down this river is quite interesting, where you go from spots of very calm, placid water to riffle to almost a little bit of rapid. And that's essentially having to do with the depth between the top of the water and the stream bed. And so the shallower that depth, the more likely you are to disturb the water at the surface and create riffles and then potentially rapids. The water, unless you increase the gradient or thin the river drastically from bank to bank, is going about the same speed. And so it really here, the riffles have mostly to do with the depth of the water. As you might be able to see underneath the water, it's quite shallow in these spots where you're getting disturbance at the surface. And then really as you look over to the right, you can see where the rocks are sticking out of the water. You have very shallow water, and that water is more likely to be turbulent than it is in the deeper sections of the river where the water is undisturbed. It's cold. Now we're coming out of the more canyon section, you can see back behind us, and we're into more of the Big Sky country, the big flat valleys. What we have here on the left bank of the river is a head gate, and so that's irrigation control. That's a spot where the farmers can take water out of the river and use it in their pivots and their other irrigation systems. So as we're moving from the canyon section into the more valley section, you can expect the river to be less steep, maybe meander a little bit more as it gets less steep and finds its way downhill. This part of the river is used, like I said, for irrigation. So farmers will be pulling out water to irrigate the fields, but then some of that water will percolate into the ground and make its way back into the river as groundwater. And so there's a lot of monitoring that's been going on. Jenna Doman and her colleagues at the Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology, Jenna's sitting behind me right now, steering this boat, has been working on that. And what they'll do is they'll, usually in the fall, when the water's lower, they'll go float the river and look near the banks for water coming in. And there'll be a temperature difference between the water in the river and the groundwater coming into the river. And they can see these different waters with a thermal camera. So you get these beautiful colored images, and you can actually quantify the difference between the temperatures of the water. And they've monitored the big hole for the last few years, and are really interested in the impacts of irrigation and climate, and then of course match that with what weathers happen during that year. So a lot of cool research going on here along the big hole, and not a bad place to be out as a scientist.